About utility. Utility, as I said to you before, this camera, it's useful in so much as it can take pictures and videos.
Okay.
Your shoes are useful in so much as they can put your feet into it. Now, if we look at the composition of you as a infrastructure, as a human being, you'll find that you're composed of different things. You're composed of morality, psychology, physiology, and different components, right? When we look at these things and we look at your psychological composition, would you agree with me that you have free will? That you are able to make conscientious decisions about moral matters in your life?
When you talk about free will, from which point of view?
So from this angle, you are able to make conscientious decisions on a daily basis that relate to your own well-being or your own being, and other people's existence as well. So you're able to make decisions which are not constrained by any other force. You have free will. Do you believe that you have free will?
Somehow.
Yeah?
Somehow.
So you can make independent decisions.
I can argue that from neuroscience point of view, which is there's a lot of arguments against that free will.
No, but do you think that you have free will? So can you make decisions which are autonomous?
Okay. Now we have to define things. I think when you talk about free will, is that what you think you're free to do. Like for example, now if I tell you move your hand, you're free to move it or not to move it, right? But that's not what neuroscience.
What I'm saying to you is, free will.
That's where my doubts come from.
Let me define free will for you. Yeah? Free will, I'm defining it here as the ability to make conscientious decisions. So yes. Yes.
That's very good.
And specifically in relation to morality. That's my
Yes, but it doesn't matter because what happens, like, again, science. I don't know about it that much, but I've read a few books about it. Then that's one of the things that makes me think, why we don't have to do it. Because they take this experiment, then there's no reason why they're lying. I mean, either they're lying or they're fallible. If they are fallible, yes, they aren't just really a problem. They could be that problem.
Okay.
But there's also certain credibility that you have to give them.
This is more philosophical matter. So
No, it's not philosophical. No, it's measurable.
So do you believe that life is completely deterministic, or do you believe it's free will?
No, I think reductionist is very weak argument because reductionist doesn't imply reconstructionist, which is it's not.
So
understanding the world doesn't mean we have to reconstruct.
Right,
I agree.
So you accept that we have free will and we can make our own decisions, yeah?
I'm skeptical.
But you do accept it to some extent.
Yes, I agree.
We'll go with that because you're skeptical of everything.
Yes, so for the reason let's move on.
So if we have free will, the question is why do we have it? If we're saying that things have utility function, so your eyes, you use your eyes to see,
right.
You use your nose and your, to smell, and you use your brain to think and
I'm aware. Yes.
Right. So my question is, if we have free will, what's the utility function of it? What does it do? What does free will allow you to do? To make what?
If we have free will.
Yeah.
To take decisions.
All right. Right. Now, if we have free will, which the utility of free will is to make decisions, therefore, this implies there is a decision to be made.
Right.
Doesn't that imply that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, of course.
Brilliant.
Of course. No, I'm telling you, nobody can deny the idea of the brain is a device for decision making.
Okay.
Or decision-making device.
Brilliant, fantastic. So now I think we're moving on now in a smooth way.
Yes.
Moving on.
But you see how many iffy we went through?
Yeah, no, it's when you do it like that,
then at the end we're gonna agree, but it's all iffy.
Yeah, that's right. Everything is iffy. That's where faith comes in. At the end of the day.
Okay.
Moving on now. So if there's a decision to be made, and we're saying that the brain or the physiology or the human composition is designed, or you can say is constructed in such a way as would allow decision making. Then I know the words have some connotations, but let's just for the sake of
okay,
right?
Keep on.
Or
because otherwise we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, right.
Maybe we can agree 50% or 60%.
That's fine. Move on now. We say so. There is a decision to be made.
Yes.
Okay. Now, this would imply purpose. Because if you say there's a decision to be made, that must mean there's a right one and there's a wrong. There's a right answer, wrong answer, right?
Can I think about it?
Think about it.
So if I take a decision, and I have this ability to take a decision, and of course, actually, the purpose of my decision. The reason why I have a brain to take a decision is because there's a purpose for something.
That implies a right answer and a wrong answer. Or
I
that you
can
ought to
argue
do
from
one thing
different
rather
point of
than
view. If okay, from my iffy point of view.
Go on. Your skeptical nature comes out.
Yeah.
Bring it out.
Okay. Yes, I am skeptical, by the way,
Yeah.
and it's wrong, and I envy you.
No.
I mean, I would like to be at the, and go to heaven.
We're going through it, man. All right,
Okay.
go on, tell me.
So I'm going to heaven? Okay, thank
I'm
you.
not saying that. I like this guy.
We're not to discuss it.
Go on, tell me now.
Okay. No, so the idea of
The fact that you have free will implies the decision to be made. We agreed,
Right,
yeah?
right.
All right, so that implies there are a series of things which you have to decide between, and you have to choose one thing of many things.
yes.
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 That's
which is
common sense
which
to
I'm
follow.
very confused sometimes about.
Okay, good. Now going back to our main question. What is the purpose of life? What is the purpose of life? So
But again, if you give me a reason, then I don't know what you're talking about because I have to go and study it, or maybe if you give me a book. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that this idea of free will
Yeah.
necessitates the purpose of life, doesn't it? So the fact that now we have free will and we have an ability to make decisions, therefore there must be a correct decision. Therefore, there must be a purpose in life for us to make the right decision.
Okay, right decision based on what?
That's now we're moving on. I like it. So do we agree so far?
Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. Yeah.
So, right decision based on what? Now, we're going to go into some concepts now, which are both kind of philosophical but also Islamic. So, one concept which I want to introduce you to is the concept of the fitrah, which is narrated in a hadith by Abu Huraira. In the hadith, it says, كل مولود يولد على الفطرة. That every mawlud, everyone who's born, is born upon the innate predisposition. The Islamic narrative is as follows, that we are human beings that are basically born into submission to God. That's why in chapter number 7 of the Quran it says that Allah said before we were created, that the arwah, the souls of the human being, that He said to them, Alastu bi rabbikum? Qalu bala shahidna. Do you take
How we measure it? Okay, I agree with you. I read that.
How do we measure it? All right, so I like this question.
Yeah.
I think you can measure it in a variety of different ways. You can measure it using psychological investigation, sociological investigation, and anthropological investigation.
Okay, let's do psychology. Maybe
Okay.
because I entered it.
No, that's good. Now, if you look at, because obviously these three branches that I've talked about
Right.
are fallible branches. I'm not saying that they're perfect,
No.
but just for the sake of, because we're moving on now,
Maybe we're going to go
if we look
on
at
research.
Oxford University,
Yeah.
they have an anthropological society.
Okay.
The anthropological
What does it mean?
So sociology is the study of society.
Yes.
Anthropology is the study of usually ancient societies and why they became to be a
Okay.
certain way, and so it's more developmental.
So it's a sociology, but
It's a bit more
With the history.
history kind of attached component attached to it, and there's more things to it. attached
because
to
I'm
it.
not familiar with the word. Yeah.
Right, so the Anthropological Society conducted a multidisciplinary study in Oxford University in 2011, and they concluded that human beings are born with their study of children. They went to many different countries, if I'm not mistaken, 35 or 50 different countries.
I want to go and read about this study. What do you call it?
Go on Google and write Oxford, Anthropological Society God 2011, something like that. You'll check it up, and you can just basically, see the reference. And I think they've got a Guardian, an article on this.
Yeah.
What they concluded is that human beings.
Sorry, say again.
So it's the Anthropological Society.
How do you spell it?
A-N.
A-N?
A-N-T-H-R-O-P-O-L-O-G-I-C-A-L. Anthropological.
I-C-A?
L, yeah. Anthropological.
Anthropological, yeah. Okay.
This is God, 2011, Oxford
God.
University, yeah, something like that. But just
What's it
look at some
called?
keywords, you'll see it on Google.
2011.
But I'll tell you what it says, and
Which
then you can
university?
it's Oxford.
Because that's interesting. Oxford.
So what they said, they concluded after looking at 35 different people, 35 different countries, and examining children at a very young age, they concluded that children are predisposed. It's exactly their words. Predisposed to the idea of God. In other words, they are born believing. How?
How do you measure it?
Okay, they measured it using a series of different indicators, psychological indicators.
Give me one.
Usually questions and answers. They gave questions and answers to the children. The children.
Which age?
They probed the children.
What age?
I think it was very young children that had not been socialized. They wanted to get children that had not been socialized. Basically, children at the age.
But the moment you start speaking and you can ask him, he's socialized.
That's a question that there are some aspects of socialization.
No, hold on. If you're talking about, because I'm familiar with the physical concept of in the children. Like, for example, if you expose the children, for example, that's 2 weeks old, right, or a month old, to physical objects, then and he gets used to it once, and you just take it off. Then he's questioning and there's no reason why he's questioning that existence. But that's different than existence. No.
All right. So what?
I would like exactly know what do you mean by experiment.
Right, so they've got a massive. To be honest with you, which I haven't gone through all of them. They've got a massive, book. Actually, not a book about it.
So is it there? That
Yeah,
65 minutes
book on it.
And they tell you all,
as I said to you before, you're right to be slightly critical because any social science thing can be critical. Yeah. Even science, you can be critical of science.
Right.
That's what science is all about.
And most important, are they Muslims?
Yes. No, they're not Muslims.
They're Muslims. They are psychologists.
Yeah, they're atheists for the most part. I think.
Okay, good.
Yeah. It makes it even more authentic from our perspective. But the idea is really that these individuals, they concluded that children have the predisposed belief in one God.
Right.
Now, it wasn't necessarily, if you think about it, if you ask children, you ask 10 kids, you're not going to ask the kid and say, how many gods do you believe in? Say 3. And a child is not going to say, I believe in Jesus Christ. If they have not been socialized, not been told this information, it's very hard to conceive that a child will come up with this information.
Right.
What's natural, we can all agree, is that human beings are born with the idea that one God exists and he's the creator of the universe.
But how they measure it?
They measured it through sociology.
No. Tell me about the experiment.
You have to look into it, to be honest with you.
How do you believe in it?
I've looked into some of the conclusions, and I've looked into some of the
But you
indicators.
must, for example, now, if you tell me to think that a
So
fundamental
what they
belief
did, they went to 35 different countries. That's their sample group, of 35 different countries. What they did was they went to the children, they asked questions.
how old they are. When you ask someone,
I think so there are different age groups, so I think it started from, you have to look at the study for sure, but maybe as young as 4 years old onwards. Yeah? And then they asked them a series of questions.
because what you're saying, what you're saying is very specific. It's very, very specific.
But
And
these are not
specificity, and when you tell me, for example, this specificity, because I can tell you, I studied immunology for 4 years, and I cannot be specific even 1%
Let me
about
tell you something.
all this I'm studying.
sympathize.
But you are so specific about children. They are not socialized, and they measure it from all over the world.
No,
and I would like to
country.
see how they measure it and how they went through that.
Okay, that's something you're gonna have to do in your own time. To be honest with you, because that's the whole study.
So am I valid with my skeptical
absolutely,
point of view?
because anything when it comes to social sciences, everyone should be absolutely skeptical because things are completely not grounded anyway. They're not objective reality. The whole point of social sciences is that they attempt to mimic the scientific method.
I'm not saying that we don't have any instinct from the beginning as we were born. There's a lot of things.
What I'm saying with
this one is very specific, which is
there is 2 kinds of evidence here. You've got this kind of new age, you could say psychological / anthropological / sociological evidence, which is a kind of evidence that can be borne into consideration, that human beings have this predisposed belief in one God. Then you have even old age philosophical arguments, even posited by the likes of René Descartes in his books of Meditations, when he said that human beings have the signature of God in them. These are old age philosophical arguments. Now, and then you have a third layer of argument, which is actually the human experience and observation, how you feel, how human beings feel. Go and ask an atheist, if you put him into the middle of the sea, how he's going to react.
If you ask about my feeling, I would love to join you. But logic is there.
But we're saying, so
I would love my heart with you.
Right, I'm with you. But do you see how it's a potent case to make to believe that one God is in fact the creator of the universe? And do you see, at least come from my perspective, do you understand how it can be substantiated from all these proofs that I told you that human beings have a predisposition?
It's logical argument that you're saying, but it's all, we build that on if that is true. But then now we have to go and prove all this iffy if it's true or not.
No, you're right.
But by the way,
I'm going to go into a second phase of the argument.
If I tell you something, you actually when we go and talk to anyone, atheist or Christian, you want to try to teach him about Islam, right? And when you try to teach someone about something, and you ask him to take or adopt this idea, right? Which is Islam or believing in God, right? Do you assume a full knowledge from the other parts, or maybe, or semi, or 100%
that person knows what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I mean, what's your? For example, now if I tell you, wow, what you're saying is true, I'm telling you. I'm with you, right? It's fine. But if I tell you no, I'm skeptical about this one or that one, then what is it? Is it like evil playing with my mind, or am I trying to prove something? What do you think? Or am I trying to make you
from the Islamic
fallible?
from the Islamic perspective?
What is that?
The Islamic perspective.
Because even me,
I can
don't
only
know.
speak to you here because this is going into metaphysics. So there's no evidence that.
No.
So from the Islamic perspective,
yeah.
we believe that every human being is born with the innate predisposition to believe on God,
Right.
and then he is socialized. In fact, that's the exact word or the exact expression that's used in the hadith. That he is socialized to be either Christian or Jewish or Zoroastrian. No, okay. So the idea of Muslim is someone who submits their will to God. Yeah.
No, I believe in one God, but I don't believe in Mohammed.
Okay.
Am I Muslim?
That would. Okay, that's a good question.
No, it's not an open question, Mohammed.
No.
It's a closed question, either
Yeah.
yes or no.
Okay.
When you ask me, I tell you yes or no, most probably,
All right,
most
so
probably.
no.
Perfect. So
question.
don't tell me submission to God. I can submit to God now, but don't believe in
Let me
Quran.
answer you, right?
Right.
There's two kinds of Islam, so to speak. There's in Arabic, Islam comes from another root word, which is Istislam, right?
Which is submission.
This is a linguistic definition of the word Islam.
Yes.
We believe that every prophet that came before the Prophet Muhammad
Yes.
was Muslim in the sense that he submitted his will to God.
God.
Not in the sense necessarily that he believed in the Prophet Muhammad.
That's right.
Because that wouldn't make sense, he didn't exist.
Okay.
Right, so
but now,
so
if
now-
I submit to God,
So now we say that the only way you can submit to God,
Okay.
in the way that He wants you to submit to God,
Right.
is going through the final messenger.
okay, what if I found Ahmadi, for example? I believe there's someone, I believe in Muhammad, and someone can come, I believe in one God. Then am I Muslim?
No, that's a good question.
Then it's conditional.
It is conditional.
It's
conditional.
it's
That's
your
right.
way.
No,
It's the
absolutely,
mainstream way.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
No, so it would be conditional.
So don't tell me
Yeah.
Islam is submission to
no,
Allah. God.
it is submission.
This is very generic.
No, but hold on. I've explained that. Hold on. Every generic
Because-
statement has specific conditions anyways. If I say to you, look, if this man here is I'm guessing you're a liberal or something, I don't know. No, maybe not liberal.
it
This
doesn't
man
matter.
here, sorry, he's a liberal, this man.
Yeah.
He's a liberal, right? So I say to him,
Oh
okay,
my
listen.
God, you're
all
liberal?
right.
How come you can be?
Yeah, so he's a liberal. I know him. He's a liberal. So I say, look, man, you're a liberal, yeah? He said, yeah. So what does that mean? What does liberalism mean? He says, look, it means that I can do whatever I want so long as I don't harm the environment, anyone else, right? That's J.S. Mill's definition. He wrote on liberty.
Of course, I
But
agree.
fine, let's just move on with that.
Liberal
he said,
and humanist, of course they have
fine.
some, yeah.
Okay, so I'm just saying that if you ask a liberal,
Yeah.
so is it okay to be racist? He'll say, no, it's not okay to be racist. Why? Because you're harming someone else. So liberalism, or the idea of being free, has its conditions, doesn't it? So if I say to you, because liberalism, if you think about it, is really the antithesis of Islam. Islam is submission. So you said to me, is it specific? You have to be Islam with certain conditions. Yeah, but it's the same with liberalism, which is the antithesis. Basically the opposite, the antonym of the word Islam, if you think about it.
Right.
So everything is conditional. Nothing is completely generic and covers all stones in its expression. So if I say to you that I'm a Muslim, or Islam necessitates submission, you say, okay, well I submit to God, but not through the Quran. I say, look, the Islamic definition or the condition that needs to be followed is that it needs to be through the final messenger. Why? Because there is a reasoning behind that. So we believe the reasoning is as follows. We believe that all the prophets came with a singular message, a pure message, a simple message, which is to believe in the one God and to worship the one God. To believe in the one God and to worship the one God. And we agreed together that, this is a very logical case to make, that the one God exists and He created the universe, right?
Must go.
Move on. All of the prophets and messengers, including Noah and Abraham and Moses and Jesus, all of them came with, we believe, this singular message. And even if you look into the old books and the old religions, which we believe are corrupted,
Which is I don't know.
you'll
You
find
mentioned.
remnants of that.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Sorry,
but
go ahead.
I have to sometimes because the focus
No,
is going to go.
sorry, go ahead.
Because now you mentioned that all these prophets they submit to God. Do you have any proof for that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a
Where?
good question.
Which proof?
All right. So now we have the only thing we can
Can you
employ
tell me
here.
what's the proof?
Yeah. The only thing we can employ here is two things: the historical timeline
Yeah.
and the religious sources. And sometimes they can be conflated. So if I say to you the historical time, and obviously the Old Testament and New Testament are part of the historical timeline. So some historians from a Western academic perspective actually use parts of the New Testament, parts of the Old Testament.
Yeah.
So it's not completely, everyone agrees that it's not written at the time of Jesus Christ. In fact, biblical scholars say that the Bible was written 17...
Which part of the Old Testament? Because I don't call it Old Testament, call it Tanakh. Because
sorry, the New
that's
Testament. I'm
Christian.
talking about the New Testament now.
The New Testament?
Alright, so
Okay.
listen, because that's obviously at the time of Jesus Christ.
where in the New Testament says there's that all the prophets submit to one
Okay,
God?
so for example, if you look at John chapter number 5, verse number 30, Jesus Christ himself says, I do not submit to myself, I submit to the Father.
Right.
In the New Testament, it's mentioned that Jesus bowed down in the Garden of Gethsemane and he prostrated to God.
Yeah.
In the Old Testament, it's mentioned in Deuteronomy chapter number 6, verse
His
number...
disciples actually bowed to him as well.
No,
he didn't say a word.
Okay, well, hold on. That's a different case because there's
Why
not.
different case?
I would say that if you look at the New Testament corpus,
Then for them, which is they're supposed to submit to God because they're disciples of the prophets.
so Jesus is one person.
Yeah.
Let's go to the Old Testament because there's more prophets in that book. If we look at Deuteronomy chapter number 6, verse number 4, it says Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. That hero Israel.
No, the Old
Hero Israel,
Testament mainly is
one God.
Yes.
So the idea is really that if we look at the historical record and the religious sources, we will find throughout civilization's history that there is a consistent theme of believing and worshipping in one God, and that's done by the prophets.
But that's monotheism.
That's called monotheism.
No, yes. But how about the other religions?
Okay, so the other religions like Hinduism and Buddhism. Okay, let's look at Hinduism as an example because it's the oldest world religion.
Right.
You'll find, although it's a polytheistic religion, it can be interpreted as a polytheistic religion.
Right.
If you look at its corpus, like for example, Ajurveda, which is part of the Upanishad, chapter number 32, verse number 2, it says that God is one without a second. So even in the corpuses of those religions, which you assume,
how come the mainstream Hinduism they don't?
no, I think that's a misconception because I think there are three ways you can interpret Hinduism. You can interpret Hinduism in an atheistic way, you can interpret Hinduism in a polytheistic way, and you can interpret Hinduism
No, I'm talking about
in a
mainstream. It's
monotheistic
like,
way.
for example, now mainstream Muslims, Sunni Muslims, which is 90% of Islam, which they have the authority, whatever.
What I'm saying to you,
that's, so me, for example, if I want to ask
why
about
is
the
it why
Quran, I
right?
come to you.
So what I'm saying to you is that no doubt the Quran affirms the fact that polytheism was always a part of the human project and it was always part of human civilization.
Yes.
Yeah, but that the base was always monotheism and that was corrupted.
Okay.
And then polytheism was a byproduct of that corruption.
Okay.
So that's why you'll find in every religious tradition, major religious tradition, you'll find remnants of at least a monotheistic expression. Well, you couldn't say the same thing about polytheism. So you couldn't say, for example, you couldn't make the case that Islam is a polytheistic religion. And you couldn't make the case that Judaism is a polytheistic religion. But you could make the case that all of the religions, all of the major religions, including the new ones like Sikhism, are monotheistic religions. And that is because all of the religions, despite their corruptions, if we talk about religions from my perspective other than Islam, have remnants of monotheism. And that is a testimony to the fact that civilization has inclined towards monotheism and that, or in fact, that prophets were initially given a monotheistic message which then became corrupted. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
So if we look at the historical timeline and the anthropological study, we'll find that monotheism was always part of the human construct or human civilization. So from that angle, there is evidence of the Islamic narrative that there's only one God worthy of worship and that there are prophets that came to espouse this message.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So now the Prophet Muhammad,
And the people that have the tendency just to go and worship even Muslims.
yeah.
Right. Okay.
Right, so that's right.
Yeah.
So people, the final prophet we would say is
So we are not immune from this phenomenon.
of moving into monotheism.
Yes.
Yeah, in the Quran it says in chapter, in chapter number 3 of the
Not
Quran.
to the Jews and
No doubt, we don't assume that we're going to go to heaven. That's not our position.
No.
In the Quran it says رَبَّنَا لَا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا بَعْدَ إِذْ هَدَيْتَنَا وَهَبْ لَنَا مِن لَدُنكَ رَحْمَةً إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْوَهَّابُ. It says, God, it's in second person, do not deviate our hearts after you've guided us. Right? So in other words, we don't. That's a dua, that's a supplication we are meant to make. So we don't assume, as some religious groups would assume, that we are saved now because we are Muslim. We assume that actually anybody can go to hellfire, even us.
Right.
So we hope for heaven, but we don't. Okay, that's
makes
our
sense.
theological position.
it's fair.
Right. Now what I'm saying to you here, so does it make sense to see, so we said here that it does make sense to believe that there's one God worthy. There's one God that created the universe, and then we talked about the prophets, and we talked about how there is both anthropological and there is sociological and psychological and historical evidence to suggest that prophets came aforetime to preach this message of monotheism, and basically that they told their followers of this monotheism, and that there's also evidence that this pure message was then corrupted.
Okay.
All right. Now we move on to what we believe is the final messenger, which is Prophet Muhammad. We believe that the difference between Prophet Muhammad and all of the other prophets that came before him is that he was sent to humanity, whereas all of the other prophets were sent to their time and their people. And once again, there's evidence of this, not only in the Quran, but also in the previous dispensations. If we look at the Bible, the book of Mark, for example, and other books, You'll find that Jesus tells people, do not go in the way of the Gentiles, for I was only sent to the lost sheep of Israel. You'll find that even the Punjabi religions like Sikhism, very Punjabi centric. You'll find that even the like other religions that came before Judaism, like Hinduism and Buddhism, once again they're very centric to that subcontinent. So the Prophet Muhammad is the only prophet who is distinguished in the fact that he actually has made it very clear that he comes for all people at all times. It's a global international religion, and this is completely clear in the Quran.
Yes.
Okay? So now there's two things we need, because we believe that the Prophet came with two things, or every Prophet came with two things. They came with a message, which is the same message, as is in chapter number 2, verse number 284 of the Quran, which says, "La nufarriqu bayna ahadin min rusuli," that we don't differentiate at all between the prophets. Yeah. But that's the message. Now, we believe also that they came with a miracle. A miracle is that which substantiates the message, or that which strengthens or acts as an evidence for the message, right? So in the case of the Prophet Muhammad, think about this, because Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, one of our scholars, he said the following thing. He said that all of the prophets, their messengers came, or their prophets came with a miracle that was specific to them, and that usually you could see.
So at the time, now we have the Quran.
So now we have the Quran, because it needed to be
So what's your
auditory.
parameters for the miracle from Quran?
Alright, so let's define what a miracle is first.
Yes.
We believe that a miracle is something which is incapacitated. Now the word mu'jiz in Arabic means that which incapacitates. That's why you have someone who's an old man, or sorry, an old woman in Arabic, it's called a ajuz.
Right.
Someone
So
who's
now what's your
incapacitated.
parameters? If I'm going to bring you a book and tell you this is compatible with the Quran, so how you can make
How
it
do we
fallible?
prove? How do we prove that Islamic?
How you can go now and read it, for example, and tell me this is not.
So I will say that there are many different ways we can do this. I will say the first thing is the preservation of the Quran. In chapter number 15, verse number 9 of the Quran, it says, "Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun."
But now it's a fallacy, because you're trying to prove something that's within the Quran, and I'm asking about the Quran itself.
Yeah, I'm talking about the Quran. So the fact.
No, I'm talking. It's a fallacy, because I'm asking you now about the Quran, and you tell me it's
So
been
do you want-
saved.
so
It's
what
been
you-
saved
yeah.
because it says so.
No,
But that's a
okay, no,
fallacy.
I can see what you're saying.
Yeah.
No, I can see what you're saying, and it makes sense. So you're saying that I'm saying
My question
something
is,
which is an informal fallacy
we
because
need
it's
to
a
set up a
it's a cyclical argument.
Yeah.
No, I accept that. But I was just mentioning the verse because I was going to actually corroborate it with other evidences. Right. So if we look at the Islamic corpus and we look at the Quran, there is no evidence at all, and there has never been any evidence in the human history for 1,437 years that there has been more than one version of the Quran.
What do you mean? Define version.
A version is that which has different content which contradicts the other content.
Different word. What different word?
No, that's not what I mean by version. That's not what I mean by version. And what I mean by version, because we don't have
So we
Quran.
have different Quran.
No, we don't have different Quran. We have one Quran.
If there's one word is changed, is it different or not?
Okay, this word changed. This is not.
If
we
there's
don't
one
accept it.
word changed, is it different or not different? Yes or no?
What do you mean? Changed.
There's
By
one
who?
word. No. If there's one difference, in fact, I bring you now two Qurans.
Yeah, I wouldn't call that a different version. I wouldn't call that a different version.
I'm asking.
Okay, let me tell you what.
Question.
Okay.
If there is a word in the Quran
alright.
different than the other Quran,
Alright, okay, let me tell
does
you.
that mean it's the same Quran or not? If you tell me it's the same Quran, that's fine. Keep
Okay.
going.
No, what
you don't
I'm-
have to wait.
yeah, that's right.
So, so for you, it's the same Quran.
For
Keep
me,
going.
what
Yes.
differentiates versions
Yes.
is contradictions. So you have one corpus,
Yeah.
which has
But two different words. It's
two
fine.
different ones is fine.
Okay.
And we have that. We have.
So we do have two different
No,
words.
we have, for example. Let me give you. No, hold on. Let me tell you what I mean. Look.
No, in Arabic version.
No,
there's no.
hold on.
He
hold
knows
on,
and I
hold
know
on.
what I'm talking about.
Yeah, look.
Do you speak
For
Arabic?
example,
You read it
let me tell you
in
one
Arabic?
example. If you look at the
Did you read it
Mus'haf,
in
open
Arabic?
up the Mus'haf.
Did you read it in Arabic?
No, hold on.
Can you be sure that there's...
Let me
Okay,
finish it.
oh,
Let me
yeah,
finish it.
okay.
Why? Because in the Quran, you can pronounce certain words in two different ways.
That's fine. If you assume, for
I
example,
accept
that's...
that.
You accept that?
Yeah.
That's fine. Keep
Yeah,
going.
move on. That's right. So what we say by version is that which contradicts each other. Different content which contradicts each other.
Yes.
That's the first, my first evidence. The preservation of the Quran, comparative and relative to other religious traditions, which don't have the same thing. Number two, we say that the Quran has within it prophecies or predictions of the future, which are very specific, and the probability of those predictions coming to fruition, had it been from a human being, are very low. And I'll give you one example.
Can you repeat that again?
Let me say that one more time. Let me say that one more time. So the Quran has predictions, it has prophecies of events that will happen in the future. Right? That I personally believe, had it been guessed by a human being,
Yes. Okay.
the probabilities will be very low. Now we can actually, from probability theory, make calculations on these things. Because if we go to William Hill, which is like, gambling place, you know what I'm saying? And I say to you, look, give me the odds for, I don't know, Chelsea losing 2-0 or something like that.
Yeah.
They'll give you the odds. They'll give you the actual odds. They'll say to you, okay, so, it's 10 to 1 or something like that.
Yeah.
So you have to put the money in, you know what I'm saying? Then if I win, he gives me X amount.
Right.
If I say Leicester's going to win the Premiership, which they did in the beginning, then if I put 50p, I would have probably been a millionaire or something like that.
Okay.
Now, the same thing, the same probabilistic theory, and you accept probability as a branch of science, branch of maths, yeah? Would apply now with the Quranic discourse. I'll give you one example. In chapter number 30 of the Quran, which is Surah Rum, and verse number 2, it says, غُلِبَتُ الرُّومُ فِي أَدْنَى الْأَرْضِ, that certainly the Romans have been defeated in a nearby land, right? And that in a few, 3 to 9 years, that they will come to be victorious. Now, if we look at just these predictions here.
Keep going, because I agree with you.
Yeah, it's just, if you do the ICD.
Jump to the next one.
So you accept this?
Yes,
So
100%.
So what do you think of that?
100% good.
So what, if I said to you, look, this prediction.
Why are you so shocked? At the beginning I told you, I don't say that I don't believe 100%. I have doubt about it.
Okay, fine. So let's say, for example, let's just flesh this out one more time.
Right.
If I say to you, in this verse of the Quran, it talks about the place where they go, it says, if you
Place, two
the
people,
place,
and it's exactly happening.
two different places, and 3 to 9 years.
Right.
So therefore,
So if you set up this one as a parameter, I accept it.
okay, you accept that?
Yes.
All right, so we move on now.
Yes.
Now there's more predictions in the Quran.
Right, go ahead.
Like for example, I'll give you one, chapter number 24 of the Quran, but also in other parts, like chapter number 48 of the Quran, which is ironically it's like double. It talks about the fact that the Arabs in Arabia at that time, the Muslim Arabs, will be victorious over the Mushrikeen Arabs or the pagan Arabs.
Right.
And it even tells you how. I mean, it tells you how they're going to go in, how they're going to defeat the Mushrikeen Arabs. It says,
Can you remind me in Arabic?
pardon?
Can you remind me that?
Yeah. It says that in the محلقين رؤوسهم ومقصرين لا يخافون. It says that they will be cutting their hair, like you, myself, mashallah, you got nice hair.
I'm going to hell?
No.
I'm going to hell or heaven?
No. Let me tell you.
Heaven.
Hopefully. I told you I can't guarantee you. I'm sorry.
We never guarantee.
Write it down, put something.
Listen to me. It says that محلقين رؤوسهم, like they're shaving it, ومقصرين, and they're trimming it as well. لا يخافون. They're not going to have any fear. And then it says, وجعل من دون ذلك فتحا قريبا. Fathan means it's a conquest. Mubina means very bright. Now imagine now, I just want you to think about this. It's telling us how these Muslim Arabs will go into this country, this city, and how they'll open it, how they'll be conquered.
It's okay.
Yeah?
It doesn't really click, but it's okay. Not that like the first one.
Let's think about it. It's not like the first one.
You agree. The first one's more conclusive.
I do agree with that.
Right?
I accept that because we've got more years, it's more things. But do you accept that this is also, do you accept this is also probabilistically a low possibility? And it's a risk. It's a risk for if it was a charlatan prophet, and he said, this is all going to happen. It didn't materialize.
Right.
Can you imagine how this would dent the reputation of the charlatan, and he would be discredited immediately?
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So you accept this. Now, the same thing could be said in chapter number 111 of the Quran, which is a very famous surah, which is Tabbatada Bilahim wa Tab, which is Lahab, which is one of the kuffar.
I know about it. Move on. Unless if you want.
No, I'll just say. So
If it's for me, but
you know about
keep
this.
going. I know.
Fine, we'll move on. So
But maybe the crowd, maybe they want to listen about it. But I'm assuming that everybody's Muslim.
that's all right.
Everybody believes in
No,
God. No doubt. You all going to heaven, guys. Peace. Stay with you.
Which kind of miracle you want?
He's not example.
He might need some special things.
So okay, so now we've got predictions. I personally believe that there is a linguistic miracle of the Quran, which can be measured.
How?
I am going to tell you. I'm going to tell you how. If you look at what you would call like the awzan, like the different meters and different. I'll give you two examples, which I personally discovered just recently, actually. Because sometimes I open the book and I realize things, and then I check them up, and it turns out to be the way I think it is. Chapter number 25 of the Quran, Surah Al-Furqan. Every surah, every verse, it ends with an alif, which is a letter in Arabic alphabet. Ends with, except for one verse, where it says at the end of it, sabil, the word sabil. Now, if you look at the context, sabil means way, like tariq or sirat even, It means like path. Now, this sabil, if you look at the theme of this chapter, it's talking about following the Prophet. Every single verse ends with an alif, except for one verse which ends with a lam, which is sabil. Now the same thing you might say is coincidence. But if we go to Surah Al-Ahzab, chapter number 33 of the Quran, exactly the same pattern is recognized. Every single verse ends with an alif, except for one word, and it's talking about, what word is that? Sabil, same word. And why is that? Because that surah is once again talking about following the Prophet. And there's different groups, the munafiqeen and this
In
and that.
fact, I've listened to someone who told me about the numeric 19. And, you know, I took the notes.
Yeah.
I went there. I talked to some mathematicians, and they told me that we have to go further on it. But
Forget about
when I
haven't
came
mentioned that
back,
today.
I came back to him, and he told me, you know what do you think? Because it could be just numerology.
To be honest with you-
And he told me, no, but this is a subjective probability. And I don't know. He put words.
Look,
But anyway.
there are some things which are numerically factual. Like for example, in the Quran, if you look at Surah Al-Baqarah, it's made up of 286 verses. In the middle of that chapter, verse 143, it says, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا, which means that we have certainly made you a middle and balanced nation. And it's in the middle of the surah. So it's chapter 143.
Yeah, it's.
So,
I would
once
say
again-
it's very low probability that was coincidence.
No. If you look at the Surah Al-Baqarah, it was revealed over the past 3 years. Yeah, it wasn't revealed all in one go.
Right.
And it wasn't revealed in that order. And in fact, it was the response to revelation. So people came to the Prophet Muhammad and asked him questions like يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ قُلْ فِيهِمَا إِثْمٌ كَبِيرٌ وَمَنَافِعُ لِلنَّاسِ. They ask you about drinking and gambling. Say that there's a lot of sin in it and some benefit for the human beings.
Right.
So he couldn't have, and another question, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْمَحِيضِ يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ there's lots of يَسْأَلُونَ. Yeah? There's lots of like, they ask you about this. So in other words, he didn't have the time to think and formulate what he was going to say and how he was going to respond. It was a spontaneous thing.
Right.
So for that to be the case and for it to be in that coherent way would be probabilistically again, using this mathematical formula, would be very low. Would you accept that?
I don't know. I have to go on.
So I'm telling you that.
I have to go.
Do you know another thing?
Actually, there's a lot of this numerical that I have to go on.
Do you know,
But
subhanAllah, I'll tell you another thing. I discovered this myself. I'm sure someone discovered this before. I discovered this myself. I was reciting the surah, doing like a little bit of revision. Because if you don't do revision, it comes out with memory. So I was doing chapter 58 of the Quran. It's called Surah Al-Mujadila. And I was reciting, I realized something. You know, in the Quran, in Surah Al-Mujadila, or it's also called Mujadila, chapter 58, in verse number 18, it says, استحوذ عليهم الشيطان فأنساهم ذكر الله. That the shaitan overwhelmed them, so he made them forget about the remembrance of Allah.
Yeah.
I realized that every single, as a counterbalance now, because Allah said that استحوذ عليهم الشيطان, as a counterbalance to this reality, that Allah put the word Allah itself in every single verse. The word Allah is actually in every single verse in that surah. And there's 22 verses. So I would say that, once again, for someone, and this surah is a response of revelation. Because in the Quran, it's قَدْ سَمِعَ اللَّهُ قَوْلَ الَّتِي تُجَادِلُكَ فِي زَوْجِهَا وَتَشْتَكِي إِلَى اللَّهِ. Yeah, so Allah has heard you when you are arguing with this woman, about her husband and this stuff. So he had to respond straight away. So once again, to respond straight away to something, but then to align the surah in such a way which is, so I would personally think, probabilistically low, is a very, very unique thing to do, a very difficult thing to do.
Absolutely, but this is the thing, Mohammed. So you remember what was the beginning when you told me about, do you think 100%? You know, but I'm skeptical, right? So you assume actually all these Muslims that are around you, they have no doubts.
I'm not saying that. Look,
let's talk about yourself.
Yeah.
You have no doubt, right?
Alhamdulillah.
But you have no doubt. Why? Because you have knowledge. Because if you tell me now, when you tell me, for example, I have no doubt, means that you have a certainty. Certainty means knowledge. Like even now when I'm telling you I'm skeptical, it's a knowledge. I'm skeptical. I'm aware of. I know I'm skeptical.
Okay, so how about this? Yeah?
But now if I tell you, for example, now it's you asking me actually to choose. But with absolute knowledge, there's no choice.
Okay, I'll tell you something.
That's why God didn't come here, and that's why I oppose the Christianity, because if God coming in, there's no point.
That's right.
No, there's no choice.
Let me tell you something.
And you're centered. You have no doubt.
Yeah.
Which is I really doubt about this, because if you don't have
I
doubt,
have no doubt, honestly.
nice.
Do you know what?
It's amazing
Let me tell you something.
because
But I don't think that's
because you don't have to
myself.
choose anyways.
No, I have.
Why
just like
why
I have
need
no
the free will?
doubt.
Why need the free will? Do you think if God's gonna come here, any one of us would say no? I mean, and we know it's God. We know for sure. It's not an illusion.
I think
Do you think who think someone here would say no? There's no God. It's a certainty. Do you think? Yeah. But yet he chose not to come. You agree with me?
Yeah, accept that.
Right? he left that doubt so you can choose.
exactly.
Because with the obsolete knowledge, you cannot choose.
I'll tell you this.
And you claim the point that he claimed obsolete knowledge. The point here, because he said that. What's the point? What's the point being sure 100%?
I actually agree with you. I mean, what's the point of religion then if you know it by certain? Then
If going through the research and thinking and have doubts and
there wouldn't be faith.
Let me say
It
something.
wouldn't be faith. I know. I'm agreeing
Oh,
with
then be fine. That's fine. And if you that's always, brother, if you tell me, for example, I believe in God, that's okay. I don't deny people saying, you know what, it doesn't matter what you're going to tell me. I believe in God. It's a belief, and it's the most rational thing to me. It's fine.
Can I say something?
I believe my father's my father. I don't have to prove it.
Alright, can I say something? Can I say something?
And it's a silly question if you tell me why I have to.
Listen, can I ask you something? So when I asked you, so do you believe in God? You said I'm skeptical and I'm not sure. So we
Yes.
went through the whole process and we talked about God and we talked about Prophet Muhammad. And again, you said with Prophet Muhammad it's even less probability. Now we've talked about it. Would you say that you feel more confident and that you can actually say, look, let me tell you something. I'm not saying that your doubt will be dissolved, right? Having doubt.
I'm saying your argument is valid. No?
Yeah.
I think most of you're saying
Right.
is
What I'm saying to you-
we passed through a lot of
What I'm saying
points
to you-
just for
I'm happy
for the
with
sake
that.
of discussion.
Thank you.
Yes.
Now, what I was going to say to you was that if you think about it,
Yeah.
doubt is no problem. Yeah, because in really what the
I
scholars,
think it's
Islamic
a
scholars,
part of the belief, or it's a
Yeah.
part of the process, right?
if you're gifted with what we call yaqeen, that's a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can continue
And if I'm not gifted,
searching for it. Yeah? Continue searching for it. But listen to me. If you put yourself in the ship of Islam and say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Yeah, I've got doubts that this ship is actually a ship, whatever. But I'm gonna, ibni ala al-yaqeen, I'm going to build upon my certainty, or ibni ala dhan even. I'm then in that situation, ibni ala dhan meaning I'm going to build upon my presuppositions and even my doubts.
I know. But that's not honest.
If I say to you that, then you be in one camp.
Yes.
You have doubts about that camp, but you can work on those doubts. Does that sound like an okay position to be in? It's a better position to be in than outside of the boat in the first place.
Well, sometimes I pray, sometimes I fast. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that's wrong.
So would
I
you
think it's a
say-
good practice.
Yeah. So
It's
I'll tell you
fine.
what.
But there's another thing that I didn't do it.
Okay. Would you
Doesn't
today?
make sense to
That's
me.
fine. That's fine. I'm going to say to you now. Today, would you like to? Because you were obviously you grew up in a Muslim family, etc. And I spoke to last week some human beings that were non-Muslims as well and stuff like that, and then they were Muslim. But how about you today, here and now? Would you like with me here and now? I'll say it once, you say it once. Yeah. To just renew the shahada, so that we can have that, yaqeen in our heart, and then after that, we can ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us. And the Fatiha, I believe, is the best way. The first chapter of the Quran, chapter 1, which is Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim. And then we can build upon that on a daily basis and think about critically those arguments that are for the authentication of Islam. Does that sound like an okay thing to do?
No, I can do it for you. I have no problem. Because I told also the Christian, if you want to go and baptize me, it's fine.
Okay, man, no, listen.
No.
But if you do this, you can't do that.
You need honesty. You need honesty. I can say it now.
Okay, fine. But
You want to say it, or you want to say it with belief?
No, listen.
With certainty.
I want you to do it. Certainty is yaqeen is what you call martaba aliyah. You don't need to have yaqeen. I just want you to have at least a
50%?
belief. Just say, like, for example,
What do you mean by belief?
do you believe that you're here right now?
No,
You believe.
Okay, but hold on.
you
I can do it. It's fine. I have no problem.
Okay, fine.
You want me to do it?
Yeah.
That makes you happy?
Yeah, I'll make me happy, yeah.
Makes you happy? Of course. Let's do it. I mean,
Okay,
at least make one person happy.
yourself. You do it.
Yeah.
But don't baptize yourself, right?
No, I'll be honest with you. If they ask me and they tell me, okay, you'll learn something about it, don't do it.
No. But you're not going to stop believing that Jesus is God.
I'll tell you something.
You're going to stop believing Jesus is God.
I'll tell you something. Maybe you're going to be surprised. You're going to like me about it. I went to satanic group as well. Yeah, believe me. Yeah, believe me. I went to satanic group and I discussed with them and I talked to them about Satan.
No, talking about
and
it's
they
fine.
told me about it. But I had discussion with them. They banned me.
Well,
That's fine. But
so
it's
it's part of the
okay.
Illuminati.
And I'm taking some courses with some rabbis.
No,
Is that
Illumi-
okay? If I
No, it's fine, man.
It's fine?
Yeah, to learn about me. I'm not telling you. But what I'm saying to you, la ilaha illallah, means
Yes.
that you don't worship the Satan now, or you don't worship Jesus Christ. You understand? See,
I don't know.
definition-
Now, yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
But maybe in the future.
But hopefully not.
I'll send you an email. I'll tell you, know what? Sorry,
Yeah, I'm
guys.
gonna take your number. Though.
What's that?
I'm gonna take your number for sure.
Oh, okay, sure.
But not on cameras, because you're on cameras. So when we finish,
No
when you do the
problem.
shahada, I'm gonna take your number. But you know,
But you know what, Mohammed?
Can I ask you
You're
a
a great guy,
question?
and for you, I'm gonna do it.
okay,
Let's do it.
Okay, so
I have
after,
to do it as belief, not
no, it's not for me.
You want me to lie?
No, he wants to do it with belief. We're gonna do it. Look, we're gonna do this with belief, right?
I'm not. Are you serious?
Yeah.
With belief?
Yeah.
No, I can't.
Why?
Because look at your arguments. We went to if. Each if with this iffy, we have to discuss it and ponder it and be sure about it. If we are not sure about it, then back again to what I was saying, most probably yes. I see a lot of good things.
Okay, you know, this most probably yes for now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say to you that
Yes.
we can transform this most probably yes. Okay, let's work with that for now.
No.
Let's work with that.
How we can do
Look,
that?
having doubt is not a problem.
I have no problem with
Okay,
saying I say
okay.
You
speak Arabic in the first place.
You believe in that?
Hold on. I believe in that? No, most probably. I have that.
Okay, that kafar.
I mean,
they were saying.
Okay, you know what? You
Not by saying.
I lie. You happy? So what? What is it? Then what do you want?
Good brother.
Okay, he wants to believe. It's not a choice. Believing is not a choice. Believe is a knowledge, and I don't have this knowledge.
Okay.
Okay,
What
so
about
again,
learning then?
Give me a number, man.
Learning, yes, I'm
Yeah.
gonna go. I took notes. I took a lot of
do
notes.
Have you done
from
any
people.
Islamic studies? You have done. You said
What's
you have
that
He's
satanic
going to
group?
heaven for
You
sure.
know that
making-
satanic group, yeah?
What's that?
Is it true about this Illuminati stuff?
No, but I would. It's not here from Canada. I'm from Canada, so yes, I was with the satanic group, and
What did you do? What they do? What they do?
I told them, okay, tell me what you believe, and what they do? They have their own belief. Actually, basically, they are atheists. They don't believe in God, and they believe in self power. They believe they have some own doctrine, which is
Where
weird
are
to
they?
me.
Have they got a place where they go?
But church, they have church,
They have
Church of Lucifer, yeah. Yeah, you know what? If you talk to those guys and they are honest, I know. You don't know that? Really? Oh, great, Church of Lucifer. Yeah, you can go and talk to them. What's wrong with going to talk to them?
Yeah, we talk. We welcome
No, I just find it
discussion
funny.
with them here
Yeah,
if they
yeah,
come.
that's
But
fine.
anyways, the thing is, you are making a very good point.
Yes.
That a faith comes through knowledge.
I don't know,
And
it's my
this is-
opinion, it's my opinion.
And this is Islamic faith.
Was that? Sorry?
This is the Islamic faith.
Which is
That it is faith based on knowledge.
That's right.
yes.
It can vary from one another.
Yes.
From one to another because we sometimes a certain amount of knowledge is sufficient for someone, but for somebody else it will be not sufficient.
No, but
So-
it's not clear in Islam. Let's say,
So
for
you
example,
might
in
need-
Judaism, to be fair to all religions, let's be fair.
Yes,
I
no
was
problem.
born Muslim.
You have to be
social
fair.
pressure.
You-
Okay, Judaism told you. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
You're sour, innit?
First thing they
You got put on?
which is the first comment.